Today is Thursday, August 24th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Russia's Civil Aviation Agency says mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was on a plane that crashed north of Moscow, killing all 10 people aboard. Prigozhin led a brief armed rebellion against the Russian military earlier this year. Wednesday's crash immediately raised suspicions, since the fate of the founder of the Wagner private military company has been the subject of intense speculation ever since he mounted the mutiny. At the time, President Vladimir Putin denounced the rebellion as treason and a stab in the back and vowed to avenge it. But the charges against Prigozhin were soon dropped, and the Wagner chief was allowed to retreat to Belarus, while reportedly popping up in Russia from time to time. Going into the first Republican presidential debate in Milwaukee, plenty of rank-and-file conservatives are happy Donald Trump won't be there. That doesn't mean they would never support the former president in a general election. They're just eager for the party to have a rigorous debate about its identity and who it wants to battle. Democratic President Joe Biden. That was the consensus at a recent gathering of conservatives hosted by radio host Eric Erickson, an influential figure on the right. Melissa Watford echoed many attendees in celebrating the chance to hear 6 GOP candidates in one-on-one sessions with little mention of Trump, who has decided to skip Wednesday's debate. India became the first country to land a spacecraft near the moon's south pole on Wednesday. It is a historic voyage to uncharted territory that scientists believe could hold vital reserves of frozen water. It is also a technological triumph for the world's most populous nation. A lander with a rover inside touched down on the lunar surface at 6:04 p.m. local time, sparking celebrations around the country, including from space scientists watching in the city of Bengaluru. After a failed attempt to land on the moon nearly 4 years ago, India joins the United States, the Soviet Union, and China as only the 4th country to achieve this milestone. The Justice Department says a witness in the federal prosecution of Donald Trump over the hoarding of classified documents retracted prior false testimony after switching lawyers last month, and provided new information that implicated the former president. The new information from the witness, a Trump staffer identified only as the Director of Information Technology at Mar-a-Lago, was presented weeks before special counsel. Jack Smith secured an updated indictment accusing Trump and 2 others in a plot to delete surveillance video at the Florida property. South Carolina's newly all-male Supreme Court has reversed course on abortion, upholding a ban on most such procedures after just weeks of pregnancy. The 4-1 ruling Wednesday departs from the court's own decision earlier this year to strike down a similar law from 2021. Writing for the new majority, Justice John Kittredge acknowledged that the ban infringes on a woman's right of privacy and bodily autonomy, but he said that doesn't outweigh what he called the interest of the unborn child to live. Chief Justice Donald Beatty provided the lone dissent. He said the law is unclear and exposes doctors to criminal charges if law enforcement disagrees with their expertise. Tropical storm Franklin is unleashing heavy floods and landslides in the Dominican Republic after making landfall in the country's southern region. The Civil Defense Agency said the storm killed 1 person on Wednesday. The storm began to slowly spin away from the island of Hispaniola that the Dominican Republic shares with Haiti after dumping heavy rain for several hours. Forecasters say Franklin could dump up to 12 inches of rain, with as much as 16 inches for Hispaniola's central region. Officials are most concerned about the storm's impact in Haiti, which is vulnerable to catastrophic flooding because of severe erosion from deforestation. 60 years ago, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. issued his resounding call for racial harmony that set off decades of push and pull toward progress. The historic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom remains a marker by which progress is measured. But that progress, namely civil and voting rights legislation passed in the mid-1960s, teeters precariously on the edge of partisanship. On Saturday, civil rights leaders and their allies mark 60 years since the original March on Washington, and they hope to recapture the spark that forever changed America. School children who were rescued from a broken cable car dangling high above a valley in Pakistan say they repeatedly feared they were about to die during the 16-hour ordeal, despite attempts by their parents to reassure them over cell phones. 6 children and 2 adults were pulled from the cable car in a daring rescue Tuesday. One of the youngest was grabbed by a commando attached to a helicopter by rope, while others were lowered to the ground in a makeshift chairlift constructed from a wooden bedframe and ropes. One student said Wednesday that the rescue was a miracle. Russian media reports that General Sergei Surovikin, a former commander of Moscow's forces in Ukraine, who was linked to the leader of an armed rebellion, has been dismissed from his job as Chief of the Air Force. The report Wednesday came after weeks of uncertainty about his fate following the short-lived uprising. Surovikin has not been seen in public since Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner Mercenary group, ordered his men to march toward Moscow. In a video released during the uprising, Surovikin, who was believed to have close ties to Prigozhin, had urged him to pull his men back. During his absence, Russian media have speculated about Surovikin's whereabouts, with some claiming he had been detained. 2 Philippine boats breached a Chinese Coast Guard blockade in a confrontation in the South China Sea to deliver food and other supplies to Filipino forces guarding a contested shoal. However, 2 Philippine Coast Guard vessels escorting the supply boat were blocked by at least 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships for about 5 hours on Tuesday. A United States Navy plane circled overhead during the encounter. It's the latest flare-up from territorial disputes in the busy sea that has become a delicate fault line in the U.S.-China rivalry. The Philippine Coast Guard invited a small group of journalists to join its ships as part of a strategy aimed at exposing China's actions in the South China Sea, which Beijing claims virtually in its entirety. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Thursday, August 24th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.